as Europe and America are looking for more commodities to industrialize themselves. And then they discovered that they did not have the resources that they wanted. But these resources were in abundance in Africa. So you have explorers coming down to Africa looking for those resources. And the beginning up of the sugar industry in the Caribbean, it needed laborers and workers. So you begin to see an orchestrated format of trying to source one, resources, number two, manpower. And is it not significant that the Berlin Conference is the one that sat down to divide Africa?
It is.
Pieces, as we have it today, where the Europeans sat around a table with a map of Africa, and then they took a pen and drew lines. You take this, you take this. And on that table, there's not one black man who was sitting on that table. It was the colonial system deciding how to divide the African cake amongst themselves. Now, how do you divide a cake amongst yourself and divide a people amongst yourself? How do you reduce a continent into a commodity for your own benefit as a few colonial slave masters? The reward the African has received so far is a horrible reward. We have built the American White House. We have built the American economy. We have built the American education system. We have built the American inventions. We have built the American medical schools. We have built the American military base. And to be rewarded as an African in America right now is to tell you that 60 to 80% of all the prisons in America are full of black people, are full of black males, relinquished and delegated out of the community because they are non-ruling. I don't condone unruliness, but I need you to understand the psychology that has gone on into the heads and the minds of the young men who have been born with no identity and have no purpose. And in the midst of them trying to find life, they're trying to break into a system that was not built for them until they become rebellious. Reggae music, R&B music, bebop music, you can even go to hip hop, or it's a black voice trying to talk and say, I am not happy where I am. Firstly, I need to admit that we have not been treated well worldwide by the colonial system. Our rewards has been tears, prisons, quarantine, sicknesses, experiments for European technologies. We have not been treated like human beings. Our reward has been degradation. Our reward has been slavery. Our reward has been the death of one of our own young men in the last few days. Martin Luther, they put a gun in his body. Our reward has been the constant slaughtering of any voice amongst the African people that would seem to speak against. Then one asks the simple question, why kill this young man? He was not standing on top of a truck holding a placard. He was not protesting. He was not shouting. He was not holding a gun. It was just a normal citizen. Hence, I consider his life as the death of a martyr. He died to start up a revolution. And I'm glad that Berlin has picked up the rudder. Was it not of the quarantine, I would have been announcing to the greater African nation that every American embassy needs to hear a petition from the African people to the liberation of the African nation at large.
Correct. Correct. Yes, we are going to send out that petition. And when do you see that coming? Please, I just want an action, a call for action after the quarantine.
If quarantine was not there, I would have been saying tomorrow morning, every African to the American embassy with a petition. The petition is simple. the liberation and fair justice to our children who are in Americas, and a free passage for their return back to mainland.
Correct. So we are saying that after the lockdown is open, we should be mobilizing ourselves to go to all the American embassies on the continent and in the diaspora with this petition that we are going to draft out there. Now, one thing that is very, very important to us that we want to know now, I mean, you have a movement that you just came out, and it is AIM. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Before I even go to AIM,
yes.
I need to make a declaration to all the African presidents.
Correct.
All the African presidents. It is illegal, it is inhuman for an African president to sign up a treaty with the American government which is mistreating fellow black people. It is totally insane and acceptable that our presidents must be traveling to America and shaking hands, begging for donations from America, when America does not do justice, is not doing justice for the black nation. I therefore even call for the boycotting of American relationships with the African continent.
Correct.
AIM.
And now, go ahead.
AIM is African Indigenous Movement. We are learning from the best, who is Trump himself. Trump says America is for Americans. And there's no one who has complained when Trump says that about his own country. I want to raise, for the first time on the continent, an alarm that must be heard loud and clear. Africa for Africans. In the same tone of language that Donald Trump said it. America for Americans. Here I am sitting here. I'm now making a declaration also. Africa for Africans. This includes the Africans who are in diaspora, the Africans who are in Europe, Africans who are in Australia, the Africans who are in the Caribbean, the Africans who are in Americas and Southern America. If America is for Americans, then Africa must be for Africans. AIM, the intention is to mobilize all African indigenous people into a movement. The movement intends to challenge the judiciary system and governance. It intends to challenge the education system. We cannot be learning about Julius Caesar and William Shakespeare, some dead bones of some European fantasies, and we don't know anything about ourselves. AIM seeks to challenge entertainment industry. We cannot be entertained by sub-moral standards of Hollywood and the European culture. AIM seeks to establish again and challenge the food and diet. We cannot be eating recycled foods and genetically modified foods. We have our own foods. AIM seeks to challenge the industry. We cannot have industries in Africa which are being owned by Europeans, and Africans are constantly being viewed like they are slaves on their own material, on their own ground, on their own profits, and they receive a small little cheap salary at the end of the month. Look at Dubai. Look at United Emirates, where they've converted their wealth into a national asset, where everyone who is born in the country must have access to those resources. I want to challenge your TV station tonight to do mathematics for me. Look for the best mathematicians in the land. I want a solution by Sunday. Number one, give me the square meterage of Africa. How big is Africa in terms of land? I want you to give me that answer in terms of square meters. How big is Africa? When you find that formula of how big is our square meterage of Africa. Number two, I want you to calculate for me how big are our oceans. How big are our oceans and how much resources are in those oceans. That speaks to your diamonds in Angola. That speaks to your oil in Nigeria. That speaks to your oil fields in the greater south and north of Africa, including our fisheries and other tourism business that sits there. Number three, I want you to calculate how many trees are in Africa and what is the value of our forestation, which they are harvesting right now in Guinea, they are harvesting right now in Congo, and converting the equatorial forests into furniture in their own houses in Europe and in China. I want to find out the value of the African trees. How much are those trees valued at? Number 4, I want you to calculate the number of wild animals we have and what is their value. Number 5, I want you to calculate the number of minerals that Africa has in the ground. Our gold, our platinum, our lead, our diamonds, our tin, our uranium, our lithiums, our berylliums, our borons, our magnesiums, our phosphates. Name them and tell me the value. Tell me the value of all those minerals. Give me the value of our agricultural products, from cocoa to palm to tobacco to maize and cotton. Give me the value. When you find that total value, I want you to tell me how many Africans do you have on the continent and what is their intellectual value as human beings. This, how many doctors do we have? How many teachers do we have? How many engineers do we have? How many electricians do you have? Consolidate that into a figure. Here is the interesting part. Add your square meterage to your sea. Add to the air that is above us for solar energies. Add to the ground. Add to the minerals. Add to the fresh water that we have. Add to the crops. And add to our human capital. When you have that conclusive figure, that gives you the value of Africa. Divide that figure by the population of Africa. You will find the unit price of one African. How much is one African? When you kill one African, how much is he worth? If you give me that figure, I'll give you a doctorate. A free doctorate. For that mathematics is the chaos of our politicians. That is the chaos of our presidents. They don't know how valuable are Africans. At the end of the day, we send them to war. They die in mines. We don't care. They are trapped in foreign countries. We don't even follow. African leaders don't know the value of their own people. And until we know the value of our African people, we are not ready to protect each other. Every time an African falls down, we have lost millions of dollars in terms of true value of the African child. AIM intends to say indigenous people come first. Indigenous people come first. We come with our culture, the Freedom Charter, the constitution of every country. The first line says human beings have a right to be, a right to be. And all I'm asking for is that an African must be allowed to be. We are not asking for more. We are not asking for less. We just want to be ourselves as indigenous people.
Wow, I think, dear listeners, you were noting the points, and I think I just noted some until I got to a point where I cannot even, and I begin to see. And these are the kind of values that if we don't do this mathematics to come out to what is the worth of a single soul that we lost on the continent, we will not be able to value ourselves. And so if our leaders whom we put in charge or whom are in charge of the people don't know this simple mathematics, then how much more would they be able to protect us? And they go for the cheap things and sign contracts that are valueless and powerless, and on the behalf of who? And us as collateral. That is not going to happen in our name. Now, Prophet, you said something that I still want to come back to. You said, before we lost you last time, that this period is a blessing to a Black person. The death of our brother George is just a significance of the beginning of an exodus.
It is the beginning of an exodus. And just to cap up on the last one, when we find the value of an African,
yes,
then we are going to multiply it by 20 million.
Okay.
That's what America owes the Negroes who were taken captive. You need to know the value that you took out of Africa, so that when the Americans right now are returning from Africa, they need to have access to that money from the American government as compensation for those that died on the Atlantic when they are coming back this way. The blessing of the death of the young man, it is that it is causing a whole new resurrection of the repatriation drive. Finally, the Black Americans and the Africans in diaspora can finally understand that the European system, the colonial system, has never loved us. It will never love us again. For that reason, this is a grand awakening. I hear the spirit of Marcus Garvey. I hear the spirit of Malcolm X. I hear the spirit of many other Black Americans who died both at sea in the sugarcane plantations. I hear the wailing of young children who were fed alive to the crocodiles in the grand, Alabama and Huntsville in the southern parts of America. I hear Black people who were shot and hunted like animals in the forests when they were running away seeking for their own freedom. I hear the groan of the Americans when they were busy harvesting the corn and the wheat and the cotton and being paid nothing for it. So for me, the death of this young man has come as a new stage of energy onto the desire to return back home and have their placentas of their grandfathers get joined with the carcasses of their body. Every African deserves to be buried back on his motherland.
Yes, I think we all know from us to us, we are having days I can't breathe, and we're seeing the revelation of Exodus, the movement of the people back to the continent. I mean, there's some people that are saying, even those in the diaspora are saying, oh, we will need passport. They have passport to get visa. I mean, 400 years, was something like that an issue?
I want to call for all world governments. I want to call for all world governments, with America as the biggest culprit. If a Black person wants to return home, Britain is the next culprit. If a Black person wants to return home, let them hear my voice and hear it loud and clear. You took my children from the continent without passports. You cannot tell me you need passports to bring them back. They left the continent with no passports. They will come back with no passports. Don't worry. We will give them new names when they arrive and restore them back to themselves. This whole issue of passports, it's a new way of managing the movement of people. Melanin is your passport. Melanin is your passport.
Hey, I mean, what are we talking about? And we keep still thinking, I mean, like some of our young brains still keep thinking that America or the West is a place to be. Dying in the oceans, going out there, looking for visas and access. Go ahead.
We want to accept that problem as a reality. Let's not be naive.
Yes.
Our presidents have converted Africa into a harlotry corner. It is a pimp shop where they are prostituting the country with the Western world, reducing the quality of life for the Africans. We must admit, in some parts of Africa, because of the political systems that are there, the greediness of the leaders that are there, where they take the economies of the country and they convert them into their own personal budgets and their personal economy, sacrificing the lives of the very people, the young people of our continent. It does not mean that they don't love their continent. Some of them right now, they die at sea because they are trying to look for a better life, not for themselves, but for the families that they've left behind. They run into the sea, leaving their wives and children behind. It does not mean that they don't love them, but the political atmosphere in which the African has been made to live in has caused for that exodus. And we want to make a challenge. Hence, we are talking African indigenous movement, harvesting our indigenous knowledge, converting our own resources into business, creating a business case for the Africans and those that are in diaspora who have the skills. We are saying, bring the skills with you. We'll give you the land, show you the mines, give you the resources where you can utilize your skills and create the industry for the next generation that will come after us. But I will not die before I see that grand exodus happening, until I shake hands with a group of my children who have left the continent, my life will have been worth a living if I can see them coming.
I will not die too. And I said we're not going to wait till 2063. It is going to happen now. It is already happening now. Now, let me just take you back to a topic that